Hello friends and welcome back to Haas of Props. I've been wanting to make something with antlers for a while now, and this Robert Baratheon helmet seemed like the perfect project. From what I recall, Robert's helmet only makes a slight appearance in this scene in the series, and even then it's an obsolete object in the background with tiny antlers. I wanted to make something that was a little more regal for a warrior king, so let's get started. I begin by cutting both parts A and B out of 6mm foam and part C out of 4mm foam. First, I close up the seams on both part A's with contact cement. I line the outer edge of the foam to try to get as smooth of a surface as possible in order to save cleanup time in the end. Next, I attached each part B to one of the part A's. Part B will need to be stretched a little to align the registration marks, but it's this stretching that will give the helmet its curved shape. While I get these edges aligned, I would really appreciate it if you would click the subscribe and notification bells, that way you can be notified when a new video drops. Thanks. Then I attach the two AB sections to each other. The sides of the helmet need to be curved a little, so I heat them up with a heat gun and bend them into place and then hold them until they cool. Part C's need a slight bevel on the center seam area. This bevel will help give the visor a pointed ridge down the front. Before I attach the two together, I use the Dremel with a sanding wheel to carve out the breathing holes on each piece. Hold the Dremel perpendicular to the foam and press the top of the sanding wheel into the surface. This will create a circle, and then you can press the sanding drum all the way through to punch out the hole. Then the two pieces can be attached with contact cement. I use the same hole punching technique on the helmet to create holes for the visor hinging apparatus. Next, I work on the Stag antlers. There's a lot of pieces for each antler, but the final result is worth the time. If you align each number to its corresponding piece, start at 1, and count upwards, you should be fine. I only apply contact cement to the edge number I'm going to attach. That way I don't end up with pieces sticking where they shouldn't. Another thing, try to avoid stretching the foam when you're gluing, or you will end up with two antlers with different curves and they will look like they came from two separate animals. When I've gotten to where a point on the antler needs to seal, I start at the base and work my way up to the tip of the point. Once the antlers are completely assembled, I clean up the seams with a smooth sanding tip on my Dremel. This can be used to file down the seams, get rid of any lines or unwanted even areas, and it can help you on the tips of the points to help give them a more rounded shape and not such a pointed shape. To give the antlers some support, I filled them up with small scraps of foam. You could also use a wire armature if you wanted. Once completely filled, I cap off the bottom with a scrap piece of foam and trim away any excess. The antlers can then be mounted to the helmet with contact cement. Take some time here and try to make sure that your antlers are symmetrical when you attach them, or they'll end up looking a little wonky. Right now the antlers look very fake, so I use this deer antler as a reference so I can add some of this bumpy texture around the base and up the stem. To do this, I'm going to use foam clay. I wrap a piece around the base and blend the edges with a little bit of water and sculpt the texture by hand using only my fingers. For the texturing up the stem, I take a thin roll of foam and blend this onto the surface with a little bit of water. I tried to keep the texture organic, looking like the real antler and not too regular, or it would begin to look synthetic and not realistic. Around the outer edge of the visor and the neck area of the helmet, I attached a triangular foam dowel just to add a little bit dimension so everything didn't look so flat. You can purchase these from the store or check out this video to see how to make your own for very cheap. On the center point of the visor, I overlap the second piece so that it can be trimmed later with a knife, and we are left with a nice pointed edge that matches the shape of the visor. I also added a strip over the eye opening. Part D can be wrapped around the base of each antler. This will be the beginning of the metal that holds the ornament onto the helmet. Once it's in place, I place 4 1/4-inch foam rivets around the circle and glue with CA glue. Then part E can be glued onto the surface of the helmet around each part D. And 4 rivets are added to these as well. I use tweezers for placement so I can avoid getting glue on my fingers. To attach the visor to the helmet, I made 2 of these pegs using 10mm and 4mm scraps. These can be inserted through the inside of the helmet, and the visor can be placed over the part of the peg sticking out. Then I add another 4mm foam circle to the peg with CA glue. With the build finish, I heat seal the helmet so I can begin the finishing process. To smooth out the seams or fill any little gap areas, I use quick seal. Apply it generously to the seam and scrape or smooth away the excess. To create the raised filigree detailing, I'm using puffy 3D paint. Make sure it has a small tip nozzle so you can get fine detailed lines. I have found it easier to draw the design with a ballpoint pen before applying the paint, and a toothpick can come in handy to push the paint around if need be. Once the 3D paint and quick seal have dried overnight, I apply 3 layers of Plasti Dip. When I got to the second coat, I wasn't happy with how the seams on the helmet were looking, so I applied some triangular stripping down the center and 2mm foam and rivets on the other seams. In the end, this wasn't such a bad thing. It helped add more detailing to the helmet. I finished applying the Plasti Dip layers and let them cure overnight before beginning to paint anything. I started by airbrushing some metallic silver onto the helmet but not the antlers. An airbrush is a great way to avoid brush marks. The antlers were based in a light tan that was made by mixing a little yellow ochre into white. To begin to make the antlers look more realistic, I keep my real deer antler nearby and use it as a color reference. When the tan had dried, I thinned some burnt umber and brushed this on mainly around the base of the antler where all the bumpy texture was added. Then wipe away a lot of the excess paint with a rag, leaving behind only the paint in the crevices. Then the same process is repeated with some thinned burnt sienna. You can bounce back and forth between the umber and the sienna to build up layers which will add more depth to the texturing. With the antlers finished, I thinned some black and brushed this onto the metal surfaces of the helmet. Then, using a rag, I dab the painted surface so that the rag lifts some of the paint and its texture in the paint is left behind. This will make the helmet look like steel and not silver. Then I take some of the burnt sienna and add little aging spots to the crevices and seams. The goal was to make the helmet look like it has been worn and has been functional and isn't just a king's trophy. Then gold enamel was brushed onto the rivets. And the same gold was used on the filigree antler details with a very fine tipped brush. I believe this was a 00. And there you have it, a Robert Baratheon inspired helmet equipped with proper antlers. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please give this project a thumbs up, share it with friends and family, subscribe to Haas of Props for more content, and if you would like to build one of these for yourself, you can find a link to the template in the below description. And remember, if you are building any of my builds or using any of my templates, feel free and tag me at Haas of Props on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, because I would really like to see your fantastic work. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.